The crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the polished mahogany dining table, reflecting off the silver cutlery and delicate bone china that had been arranged with meticulous precision. Olivia smoothed her simple black dress nervously, aware of the subtle whispers and glances exchanged between her stylish sister Catherine and their mother, who was adorned in pearls and silk. The opulence of the Sterling mansion was suffocating in its perfection, a sharp contrast to the quiet intensity of the bag resting against Olivia's chair, her laptop bag, carrying 5 years of painstaking quantum research. Every notebook, simulation file, and experimental result within it represented late nights, countless failed experiments, and her unwavering pursuit of a breakthrough that could redefine technology. Olivia glanced across the table at Catherine, who sipped her wine with a practiced elegance, a smirk tugging at the corners of her mouth as though she could already sense her victory in the unspoken competitions of their family. Their mother, ever graceful, nodded approvingly at Catherine's effortless charm, her eyes briefly flicking to Olivia with a mix of pity and expectation. The atmosphere, thick with the scent of roasted lamb and truffle butter, shifted as their father, the formidable head of Sterling Industries, set down his glass of Bordeaux. His presence alone demanded attention. Decades of commanding the family empire were etched into his posture and the calculated calm of his voice. "Victoria," he began, using Olivia's formal name, "we need to discuss your research funding." The words hit her like a cold draft, freezing her mid-motion with fork poised. Her heart thumped, a rhythmic echo of anxiety and disbelief. The quantum stability algorithm she had spent half a decade perfecting, her life's work since graduating MIT, was on the line. Each test, each simulation, each tiny success that had made her pulse quicken in the silent hours of her basement lab suddenly felt fragile, as though it could shatter under her father's disapproval. She forced herself to meet his gaze, steadying her voice. "What about it?" Her father leaned back slightly, his eyes narrowing with a mixture of business pragmatism and familial impatience. "The board feels it's time to cut our losses," he said, sliding a folder across the gleaming surface of the table. The weight of the paper seemed symbolic, a physical representation of the judgment he was about to deliver. Olivia's throat tightened. She opened the folder, her fingers brushing over financial reports and projections that treated her years of innovation as little more than a ledger item. Her protests formed in her mind, passionate and reasoned, but the words caught somewhere between her intellect and her fear. She could already sense Catherine's smirk, the silent chorus of family approval waiting to dismiss her dreams as impractical. Every second stretched as the clinking of silverware and low hum of the dining room seemed to fade, leaving only the heavy, almost tangible presence of expectation, judgment, and the unspoken question: would innovation survive in a household ruled by legacy, wealth, and the relentless pursuit of immediate profit? The clink of fine china seemed louder now, echoing in the ornate dining room like an accusatory metronome. Olivia's fingers tightened around the edge of her chair as her father slid the folder toward her. His expression was unreadable, a mask perfected over decades of boardroom negotiations, but his words cut sharper than any dagger. "We're selling your research division to global tech," he declared, calm yet final. Olivia's heart stumbled. "What?" Her voice was barely a whisper at first, then rose, trembling with disbelief. "You can't do that. We're on the verge of something that could change everything." Catherine laughed, a sound sharp and thin as crystal. She leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine glass with deliberate slowness. "Finally," she said, her tone dripping with mockery. "That basement lab of yours has been an embarrassment for the family name for years." Olivia's chest tightened. She could feel the weight of years of invisible labor pressing down on her shoulders. The sleepless nights, the painstaking simulations, the countless experiments gone wrong before the breakthroughs began to surface. And here they were, dismissing it all as a family embarrassment. "Promising isn't profitable," her father continued, eyes locked on hers with an unyielding resolve. "Maxwell Industries, Sterling Industries now, in name if not in principle, needs certainty, Victoria, not theories." Her mother dabbed delicately at her lips with a napkin, her voice gentle yet insistent. "Darling, perhaps it's time to do something practical," she said, almost pleading. The words felt like sandpaper against Olivia's dreams, eroding the foundations she had built carefully, one quantum algorithm at a time. Olivia's protest rose from deep within her. Practical? You mean abandoning progress for profit? The tests are showing real stability. The quantum simulations are consistent. We are so close to breaking through. Catherine snorted, leaning across the table with a smug grin. Close doesn't pay the bills. I'm bringing in real revenue, while you hide in your equations, hoping for miracles. Anger and disbelief collided in Olivia's chest. She could see the invisible lines of loyalty and betrayal stretching across the table, separating her from the family who was supposed to protect her, nurture her intellect, and celebrate her achievements. Yet here they were, applauding replication and profit while dismissing genuine innovation. Her father's hand rested on the folder again, a subtle but unmistakable signal that the decision was final. The transfer is arranged. The papers are ready. Sign them, Victoria, and we can all move on. Olivia swallowed hard, the words sticking in her throat. She felt cornered, trapped between familial expectation and the responsibility to protect the work of her life. Every neuron in her mind fired, not with panic, but with determination. This was no longer just about recognition or respect. This was about survival, about claiming the value of her intellect before it could be stolen or destroyed. And in that moment, amidst the clinking of silverware and the faint scent of roasted lamb, Olivia realized her fight had only just begun. The pen in her father's hand scratched across the polished surface of the mahogany table, each stroke echoing like a countdown in Olivia's ears. Her breath came in shallow bursts, her fingers twitching as if they wanted to stop the inevitable. The folder of transfer papers sat heavy in front of her, a physical embodiment of the family's dismissal of her years of work. And then her phone buzzed. Once. Twice. 3 times, relentless, urgent, insistent. Each vibration was a tiny shock against the quiet tension of the dining room. Olivia's hands shook as she fished the device out of her bag. She stared at the screen, eyes widening as 3 notifications from the patent office flashed like lightning. She opened the first. Her heart leapt. Quantum stability algorithm. Patent number 457892. Approved. Her breath caught. Could it be real? 5 years of painstaking work, countless sleepless nights, simulations running into the early hours of the morning, all validated in a single message. Before she could fully process it, the second message arrived. Breakthrough designation granted. Olivia's fingers trembled on the screen. This was more than recognition. It was a declaration that her work was revolutionary, that it could not be ignored. The quiet basement lab where she had toiled alone for years had produced something that the world deemed extraordinary. The third message blinked urgently. She hesitated, then opened it with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Initial bidding offer, $3.7 billion. Please advise. The digits swam before her eyes. Her father's pen hovered mid-signature, oblivious to the storm breaking through her phone. Catherine's smug expression faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly, trying to mask the sudden tension. Olivia looked up, her voice calm but cutting through the room like a blade. About that signature. She held her phone up, displaying the screen. It seems the patent office disagrees with the notion that this is worthless theory. Her father froze mid-stroke. The pen slipped from his hand, leaving a dark blotch of ink on the pristine white tablecloth. Catherine's wine glass paused halfway to her lips, her smirk gone, replaced with disbelief. Her mother's fork clattered sharply against her plate. $3.7 billion, Olivia repeated slowly, savoring each word, letting it sink into the minds of the family who had so casually dismissed her. Not million. Billion. And that's just the starting bid. For a moment, silence reigned. The grandeur of the dining room seemed to contract, the chandelier's glow dimming under the weight of reality. Olivia's gaze swept across her family, their assumptions, their underestimation, their blind confidence in immediate profit over potential genius, and she felt a surge of vindication and resolve. She tucked her phone carefully back into her bag. This was her first strike, the beginning of reclaiming what was hers, and the room would never look the same again. The room fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the faint hum of the chandeliers and the ticking of the ornate grandfather clock. Olivia held her phone calmly, the glow from the screen illuminating her determined eyes. Her father's hand had frozen mid-air, the Mont Blanc pen slipping from his grasp and leaving a dark smear across the pristine tablecloth. "Dad." "Catherine," Olivia began, her voice soft but firm, carrying across the room with a weight that none of them could ignore. "Before you go any further, these transfer documents? They're worthless." Catherine's smirk froze. The wine glass in her hand wavered as if gravity itself hesitated, refusing to let her drink it. What do you mean?" she stammered, her tone betraying a crack in her confident facade. Olivia's gaze swept across the family, unflinching. "The patents are in my name, not Maxwell Industries, or Sterling Industries, or whatever legal entity you've been managing. I registered them privately last week. All of it. Every algorithm, every test, every breakthrough mine." Her father's jaw tightened, his face pale. He had assumed that the transfer papers he signed would secure control over her life's work, a routine business transaction with a familiar outcome. He had underestimated not just Olivia's intellect, but her foresight, her meticulous planning. You can't do that," he spluttered, attempting to regain control. "The company funded." "My personal trust fund funded it," Olivia interrupted gently, yet her tone carried the undeniable finality of fact. "The one Grandma left me. I never took a penny of company money. Every dollar spent on this research was my decision, my risk." Her mother's fork trembled in her hand as she slowly placed it back on the table. The pearls around her neck glinted faintly in the chandelier light, but her eyes betrayed surprise, and perhaps the first glimmer of understanding of the magnitude of Olivia's achievement. Catherine, face drained of color, tried to recover her composure. "But the transfer papers. The board. Dad was acting in the company's best interest." Olivia's lips curved in a small, controlled smile. "The board. The transfer? They don't matter. None of that holds without legal ownership of the patents. And as you can see," she tilted her phone slightly, displaying the glowing screen for all to see, "the starting bid for these patents is $3.7 billion. The words hung in the air like a shockwave. Catherine's wine glass slipped slightly, her hands clutching it as if it could somehow stabilize her shaken world. Her father's eyes widened, and for the first time, Olivia saw the uncertainty that decades of authority could not mask. $3.7 billion, Olivia repeated, letting each syllable resonate. "Not million. Billion. And that's just the beginning." A silence fell heavier than any words could carry. The illusions of control, the arrogance of dismissal, and the assumed superiority of wealth over intellect, all of it crumbled in the span of a single revelation. Olivia's quiet defiance had shattered the carefully constructed hierarchy of the family dinner, leaving her standing at the center of a room where every gaze was finally, unmistakably hers to command. Her heart raced not with fear, but with exhilaration. For the first time, the weight of her research did not feel like a burden. It felt like power, tangible and unstoppable. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that the real battle had only just begun. Olivia's gaze swept across the stunned faces of her family. The initial shock of the patent revelation had barely settled, and now she seized the moment to assert the full scope of her control. "You need to understand something," she began, her voice calm but imbued with authority. "Every cent of this research came from my personal trust fund, the one Grandma left me. Not a dollar from Sterling Industries. Not a single investment from the board. I risked my inheritance because I believed in the work, and because I knew that true innovation cannot be dictated by short-term profit margins." Her father's lips pressed into a thin line. Catherine blinked rapidly, her earlier arrogance crumbling under the weight of this revelation. Even her mother, ever the voice of reason and social decorum, could only stare, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. Before anyone could respond, Olivia's phone buzzed again. She pulled it out and saw the new notification. "Google has raised the bid to $4 billion. Her eyes sparkled with restrained triumph. She tilted the phone slightly, letting them all see the screen. The numbers were more than digits. They were recognition of her brilliance, validation of years of meticulous work. $4 billion, she said softly, letting it sink in. For a project that everyone in this room thought was just a basement hobby, a collection of equations no one could understand. That's what happens when intellect meets vision, and courage to take risks. Then she stood, setting the phone down and opening her laptop. In moments, the dining room was bathed in the soft glow of a holographic display. Tiny particles danced in intricate, almost hypnotic patterns, forming grids, waves, and rotations that no ordinary observer could interpret, but the implications were unmistakable. This, Olivia said, gesturing to the holograms, is the quantum stability algorithm I've been developing for 5 years. Room temperature quantum computing, stable and repeatable, something the world's top tech companies have been attempting for decades without success. Her family watched, riveted despite themselves. Even Catherine's smirk wavered as the hologram shifted, showing quantum particles in perfect synchronization, calculations and simulations flashing in real time. Olivia rotated the display with a flick of her wrist, highlighting the stability under conditions that would render other systems useless. Every simulation, every test, Olivia continued, her voice steady, proves that decoherence, a problem that has confounded physicists for years, is no longer a barrier. We can maintain coherence at room temperature, at scale, with systems that are smaller and more efficient than anything currently imagined. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the holographic projector. Her father, whose authority had always gone unchallenged, finally spoke, his voice tight. "Victoria, this is remarkable." Olivia smiled faintly, letting the acknowledgement hang in the air before continuing. "Remarkable, perhaps, but also irreversible. This is why promising isn't always profitable. Sometimes, the world needs proof, not speculation. And I've provided it." She glanced at Catherine, whose eyes had widened, reflecting a mix of shock and envy. "The value isn't just in the money," Olivia said, returning her gaze to her father. "It's in the technology itself. And now, everyone knows it. Google other tech giants, they're not just buying a patent, they're bidding on the future." For a brief moment, the dining room felt like the epicenter of a seismic shift. Olivia's intellect, her foresight, and her unwavering dedication had transformed a family dinner into a revelation, a clear declaration that she was no longer just a quiet daughter in the basement, but a force whose influence and innovation could not be ignored. The room was still vibrating from the revelation of Olivia's first patent and the staggering $4 billion bid, but she wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. She leaned slightly forward, her eyes locking onto Catherine with a calm precision that made her sister recoil ever so slightly. "You've been asking why I took so long to finish my reports," Olivia began, her voice soft but firm. "Why some of my simulations looked inconsistent, or why the data I submitted to the board seemed incomplete at times. Do you want to know the truth?" Catherine's smirk faltered. She opened her mouth, but Olivia cut her off with a raised hand. "For years I observed you," Olivia continued, eyes narrowing. "Watched how you stole innovations from other divisions, how you covered your tracks with decoy reports, how you misrepresented data to make yourself look indispensable. You taught me the value of misdirection, and I used it against you." Her father shifted uneasily in his chair. Olivia's mother placed a hand lightly on hers, sensing the rising tension. "The reports you dismissed as trivial, the experiments you mocked as failures, carefully crafted decoys," Olivia said, her voice low, deliberate. "Every time you thought you had me cornered, I was building the real work in secret." She pulled out her tablet, and the holographic display shimmered to life once more, showing abstract simulations, schematics, and interconnected quantum systems. "I didn't just develop one patent," she continued, her tone measured but commanding attention. "I filed 12 patents, each one a building block of a comprehensive quantum portfolio, covering quantum stability, computing, encryption, and storage. Conservatively valued at $15 billion. And that's a low estimate. considering military and industrial applications. Catherine's fingers tightened around her wine glass. 15 billion? That's impossible, she stammered. Olivia's smile was subtle, almost serene, but it carried an undeniable authority. Not impossible. Just unseen. You spent your career exploiting others, but I spent mine creating, silently, methodically, invisibly. Her father's face drained of color, realizing for the first time the magnitude of his misjudgment. Olivia's calm demeanor masked the strategic brilliance of years of careful planning. Every decoy, every misdirection, every hidden calculation had been executed to safeguard her work until the time was right. And now, Olivia said, raising her hand slightly to command the room, the work you tried to dismiss, the ideas you scoffed at, the innovations you thought were inconsequential, they are untouchable. And I am untouchable, in ways you are only beginning to understand. The family dinner, once a battleground of social appearances and corporate politics, had transformed into a stage where Olivia's intellect and foresight had established her absolute dominance. In that room, she was no longer the overlooked daughter or the quiet scientist in the basement. She was the architect of a hidden empire that even her own family had underestimated. And as she gathered the tablet and her laptop, Olivia knew one thing with absolute certainty. The next move in this game was hers, and no one at that table, neither father, mother, nor sister, would ever dictate its terms again. Olivia's calm had an edge now, an unmistakable steel underlying the poise. She reached into her bag one final time and withdrew a thin, unassuming folder, the kind that could be mistaken for routine paperwork by anyone who didn't know its significance. Her father's gaze flicked to her, a flicker of suspicion crossing his usually unshakable expression. "Victoria, what is that?" he asked cautiously. She placed the folder on the table and slid it across with a measured gesture. "This," she said, her voice steady and precise, "is the final piece of the puzzle. The clause in my board appointment papers that matters most." Catherine leaned forward, curiosity mixed with a tinge of fear in her eyes. "Board appointment papers? What are you talking about?" Olivia opened the folder and let the documents fall neatly in front of her. Page 47, paragraph 3. In the event of an attempted intellectual property appropriation, all voting shares held in Sterling Industries by the board or any executive attempting such an act are automatically transferred to me. Effective immediately. The room seemed to inhale as the words settled in. Her father's face paled, and the pen he had recovered from the ink stain now clattered uselessly on the table. The authority he had wielded over decades in the boardroom, and over his own family, was evaporating in an instant. "I am now the majority shareholder of Sterling Industries," Olivia continued, her calm voice resonating with power. "The control you've exercised for decades, Dad, has been neutralized. The company, and its future, are officially in my hands." Her mother's eyes widened, a mix of awe and concern, while Catherine's hand tightened around her glass, the faint tremor betraying her shock. Olivia leaned back slightly, letting the magnitude of her words sink in. "And as the controlling shareholder, my first act will be straightforward, calling an emergency board meeting. Every decision made without the consent of the rightful shareholder is void. Starting today, we reclaim the company's future." She glanced at her father, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "You might want to prepare your retirement speech. I suggest you consider the timing carefully." Her father opened his mouth to protest, but the weight of reality held him silent. The signatures he had thought irrevocable on the transfer papers, the power he assumed to wield, were meaningless against the legal foresight Olivia had embedded in her board appointment. Catherine finally found her voice, though it lacked conviction. You can't just do this. You're barely. Olivia interrupted, a thin smile touching her lips. "I've watched. I've planned. I've ensured that when the time came, I would not just defend my work, but seize control. And that time is now." The room, once dominated by her father's presence, had shifted entirely. Olivia, the quiet daughter once dismissed as naive and impractical, now commanded every eye, every attention, and every consequence within Sterling Industries. The subtle vibrations of her authority had turned into a force no one could ignore. She gathered her folder, stood, and let the calm conviction of her triumph fill the room. The family's shock, their disbelief, and the remnants of their arrogance were immaterial. The board meeting, the restructuring, and the reclamation of Sterling Industries' future had begun. And Olivia knew, with unshakable certainty, that no obstacle in that room, or in the world, would derail what she had meticulously planned for years. The conference room was tense, the air thick with anticipation. 14 board members sat rigidly in their leather chairs, eyes darting between Olivia and her father, the longtime CEO of Sterling Industries. Even the city skyline outside seemed to hold its breath, its reflection in the glass walls mirroring the corporate storm unfolding within. Olivia stood at the head of the table, her tablet in hand. She allowed a moment for the murmurs to die down, then spoke, her voice calm, yet resonating with authority. Before we discuss the company's future, I believe it is necessary to address its recent past, she began. Specifically, the systematic corporate espionage conducted by a member of this family. Heads turned sharply toward Catherine, who now sat frozen, her usual smugness replaced by a flicker of panic. I have compiled detailed records of your activities over the past 5 years, Olivia continued, tapping her tablet. The screens around the room flickered to life, displaying documents, emails, and surveillance footage. Every stolen innovation, every suppressed project, every researcher you undermined or terminated illegally, meticulously documented. The room fell into stunned silence. Even her father, who had long prided himself on his authority, could only gape. This is what happens when arrogance and deceit replace genuine innovation, Olivia said, her eyes sweeping over the board. But today, we rectify those wrongs. She tapped her tablet again. The holographic display shifted, revealing the architectural blueprints of a massive facility concealed beneath what appeared to be her small basement lab. Project Phoenix, Olivia announced, her voice steady and resolute. A fully operational, state-of-the-art quantum research center, larger than 3 football fields. While the company believed I was experimenting quietly, this facility has been built entirely with private funding and with absolute secrecy. Every breakthrough you dismissed happened here, unseen. Gasps echoed through the boardroom. Catherine's hands trembled as her eyes darted across the schematics, realizing for the first time the scale of what she had underestimated. Olivia rotated the holographic model, highlighting various sectors: advanced quantum computing labs, encryption units, simulation chambers, and automated experimental rigs. This is not just a basement project, she continued. It is the culmination of 5 years of work, meticulously shielded from those who would exploit it. She paused, letting the magnitude of her revelation settle. And starting today, the researchers you dismissed, silenced, or pushed out will return. They are the backbone of Sterling Industries' future, the true innovators. You, Catherine, will no longer have the power to derail progress through theft or intimidation. Her father's hands clenched the edge of the table. Victoria, this is extraordinary, he muttered, a mix of awe and disbelief in his tone. Olivia's gaze hardened. Extraordinary? Yes. But overdue. You built your career on deception. I built mine on real breakthroughs. And now, it is time to set the record straight. The room was silent, the weight of her words hanging over everyone like a tangible force. The board members, once wary of her youth and perceived inexperience, now looked upon Olivia with cautious respect. The hidden empire she had constructed was undeniable, and the power dynamics in the room had irrevocably shifted. Finally, she lowered the tablet, locking eyes with Catherine. Project Phoenix is only the beginning. The future of Sterling Industries will be built on innovation, integrity, and vision, not theft, fear, or shortcuts. The subtle hum of the holographic display filled the silence, a quiet testament to the immense power Olivia now commanded, and the irreversible exposure of the imposter who had tried to steal it. The boardroom was still absorbing the shock of Project Phoenix, the hidden quantum facility beneath what had seemed an unassuming basement. Olivia stood tall, her tablet now projecting real-time simulations of the breakthroughs her team had achieved. The holograms shimmered with a clarity that left the board members awestruck. "You all assumed I was merely playing with equations," Olivia began, her tone calm but resonant, commanding the room's full attention. "But while I appeared to tinker quietly, I was orchestrating the creation of the world's most advanced quantum research facility. Every calculation, every experiment, every system was designed for one purpose: to redefine what is technologically possible." Her fingers danced over the tablet, rotating simulations of quantum particles in perfect coherence. "Sterling Industries has now achieved quantum supremacy. Our systems can solve problems in hours that would take traditional supercomputers centuries. Protein folding, climate modeling, encryption. Our algorithms outperform any conventional technology. The implications for medicine, security, and environmental science are unprecedented." Gasps echoed around the room. Even her father, whose authority had long gone unquestioned, felt the weight of years of underestimation. The quiet daughter, the basement scientist, had just reshaped the landscape of technological possibility. Olivia's gaze shifted to her father. "Dad," she said, her voice firm yet controlled, "I have one final offer for you." He looked up, unease flickering across his face. "Your retirement package," she continued, holding a folder out toward him. "Consider it before the SEC investigation begins. This is your opportunity to step down gracefully, preserving your legacy while acknowledging the reality of who now steers Sterling Industries." Her father swallowed hard, eyes darting between her unwavering expression and the blinking holograms illustrating the magnitude of her work. "You planned all of this?" he finally asked, voice tight. Olivia nodded. "Every decoy report, every seemingly minor experiment, every careful move to protect my intellectual property, it was all deliberate. I've not only preserved my research, I've ensured the company's future, free from the shadows of deceit and exploitation." She paused and allowed the words to sink in. Project Phoenix is not just about quantum supremacy. It's about creating a foundation for innovation that Sterling Industries has lacked for decades. The board, the researchers, the future of this company, they will operate in the light of transparency, integrity, and vision. A murmur of astonishment rippled through the room as her team of returning researchers entered quietly, standing at the edges of the room. Their presence was both a declaration of restored justice and a testament to Olivia's foresight. The very people Catherine had attempted to erase were now poised to lead the next generation of breakthroughs. Olivia's eyes returned to her father. "The choice is yours. Accept the retirement package now, or risk the consequences of corporate governance and regulatory action. Either way, Sterling Industries will continue to thrive, but under my direction." The silence was absolute. The gravity of the decision weighed on her father, Catherine, and even the board members. The company's legacy, the family's reputation, and the future of technological innovation rested on this moment. Olivia, once dismissed and underestimated, now stood as the unassailable force shaping that destiny. Finally, she smiled faintly, a mixture of resolve and quiet triumph. "The future is here. And it belongs to those who build it with vision, integrity, and intellect. Welcome to the new era of Sterling Industries." The morning sunlight streamed through the glass walls of Sterling Industries' newly transformed headquarters, casting long rays over open innovation hubs, transparent meeting rooms, and clusters of researchers collaborating freely. The oppressive atmosphere of hierarchy and secrecy that had long stifled the company was gone. Olivia walked through the corridors with a quiet confidence, observing teams of scientists and engineers immersed in projects that once had been buried or dismissed. It had been 1 month since she had assumed full control, and the changes were already palpable. Laboratories that were previously empty or mismanaged now buzzed with life. Quantum simulations ran continuously, new algorithms were tested in real time, and interdisciplinary teams brainstormed solutions to some of the world's most pressing challenges: protein folding, climate modeling, encryption, and renewable energy. The stock ticker on the lobby screen displayed unprecedented gains, but Olivia's focus wasn't on the financial success. It was on innovation, integrity, and impact. Her assistant quietly announced her mother's arrival. Olivia turned to see a familiar, transformed figure stepping through the doors. Gone were the designer suits and pearls. In their place was simple business attire and a folder tucked under her arm, a subtle sign that she was ready to engage with substance rather than status. "Mom," Olivia greeted, smiling warmly. "It's good to see you." Her mother hesitated for a moment, then returned the smile, tinged with humility. "Olivia, seeing all of this, I realize now that the family, not you, was the true disappointment. We focused on appearances, control, and short-term gain, instead of nurturing real talent and innovation. You've reminded us of what truly matters." Olivia reached out and took the folder from her mother. "Then let's do something meaningful with it," she said. "I'd like you to restructure grandfather's charitable foundation. It should fund young scientists, innovators, and projects that make a real difference, not country club memberships and empty prestige." Tears welled in her mother's eyes. I'd be honored." Together, they walked through the bustling halls toward the newly redesigned boardroom. Each step was symbolic, a journey from the shadows of the past into the clarity of a new era. The room was now filled with natural light, glass walls replacing the old opaque partitions, and familiar faces of researchers whom Catherine had once driven out were returning as department heads. Their excitement was palpable, their expertise invaluable. Olivia paused at the doorway, looking out over the city skyline. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. "The future belongs to those who build it with vision, courage, and integrity. And now, we lead together." Her mother nodded, opening her folder to review new project proposals. "I see what real innovation looks like now," she said. "Thank you for showing me the way." Olivia smiled, feeling the weight of both responsibility and opportunity. Notifications buzzed quietly on her tablet. Clinical trials for cancer therapies showing unprecedented success, climate models refined to neighborhood precision, quantum encryption breakthroughs ready for deployment. She ignored the stock alerts. Numbers could always rise. Revolutions were measured in impact. She turned fully to her mother. "The question now is, what will you build with this knowledge, this power, this opportunity?" Her mother looked up, squared her shoulders, and smiled with a newfound resolve. "Let's build the future together." As they entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Olivia's assistant whispered, "The new medical division is ready for launch. The researchers are assembled." Olivia glanced at her mother, then at the returning team. "Today, we announce a new era of Sterling Industries. One driven not by legacy, fear, or ambition, but by real, tangible innovation that will change lives. Are you ready?" Her mother nodded. Olivia's gaze swept across the room, filled with renewed talent and purpose. "Let's begin," she said firmly. And as the doors closed behind them, the first meeting of the company's new era commenced, a convergence of intellect, integrity, and imagination that promised to leave a lasting mark on the world. The quiet daughter, once overlooked and underestimated, had built a revolution. And this revolution had only just begun.